So I'm often asked, what's in Karl's pack? So I'm going to go ahead and unveil what's in Karl's pack. Some of some of this gear is fairly exotic. I've acquired it over a long period of time. This is my hobby, my passion, a business. So I have invested in some pretty lightweight gear. The older I get, the more my pack needs to be lighter, or I wouldn't be able to just keep doing all of this. So bear with me. I'm going to, hopefully some of these things will also just be as examples. Now the first thing we talk about is that it needs to be 70 liters, and this is a 70-liter pack, packed fully. One of the other things to note though in here is that this is packed as if I was a solo glacier climber, and obviously we don't tend to venture at our skill levels as solo glacier climbers. We would share things like the cooking, the shelter, and the rope. But I'm going to be pulling out of this pack the climbing rope, the shelter, and the cooking system. So take that into account, that you might be able to get by with a little lighter or less volume pack when those items are shared. But I do want to emphasize that you want most of the gear you're taking on these trips inside of the pack, where the suspension of the pack itself can control the weight. The sooner and the more we put dangling all over the outside of the pack, particularly heavy objects further from our back or heavy objects lower, the worse it's going to carry and the less comfortable it's going to be. Now, there's a couple of items that we just can't get around that are either too bulky to go inside, or they're sharp and pointy and you wouldn't want them inside. So in my case, I carry a 2-pad system. I carry a closed cell foam pad, not exclusively, because I couldn't stand the lack of comfort, but I want to have it for reliability's sake. And then I have another pad that's an air inflatable blow-up style and insulated air mattress. But a foam pad typically is going to be carried on the outside of a pack somewhere. Another object, if we resort when we're not actually using it for hiking, would be the trekking poles. So you'll notice that I have my trekking poles secured to the back of this pack. I also have a shovel for when we pitch the tent. That's attached to the outside. And then 2 specific pieces of climbing gear, a picket and an ice axe. They need to have a home on the outside of your pack. Now, most backpacking manufacturers have already included a way to carry your ice axe. There's going to be some upper position where it straps on, whether it's going underneath a compression strap or there's a dedicated spot or some means of attaching the upper part of the shaft. There's always then usually a loop at the bottom of the pack. So if you've ever wondered what those loops are at the bottom of your pack about, they're meant for carrying an ice axe, even if you're just a backpacker. So you put it in a T configuration, you put it down through the top of the loop, and then you flip it up and secure it. And that's how an ice axe is held in most backpacking situations. The picket is the snow anchor that I'll be issuing you. This is most easily carried underneath compression straps. So the hope would be that your pack's going to have some kind of compression straps. These kind of details of carrying this technical gear we can work out during the on-snow training that day. Now, I mentioned previously that handy access to water is important. So if I'm using liter bottles, I have these pockets mounted on the side of my pack that I added as accessories from a third-party vendor to make this pack have accessible water bottles that I can reach while I'm hiking. I have since gone to also aftermarket water bottle accessory carriers that attach to my shoulder straps, and I find that carrying 2 half-liter, 16-ounce, 500 milliliter bottles on my shoulder straps is the most convenient way of accessing water for me. I really like hip belt pockets, and in fact, at this point, let's go ahead and kind of show you what might all be in there. Usually I dedicate one side for gear. I have a watch. I have my buff, which is a polyester tube of fabric, that I can wear, protecting the lower part of my face. And I really like buffs. So buff, a pair of liner gloves. And in my case, I bought Burley liner gloves that actually have leather palms, helps them to last a little longer. And I could put other things in this pocket, like sunscreen, lip balm. In this pocket, I have lunch, snacks, and yeah, here I have lip balm, sunscreen, some snacks. That way I can access the ability to replenish my sunscreen and eat without ever taking my pack off. And I can drink and hydrate without ever taking my pack off, and I need no assistance to do anything. One of the ways you get a lighter pack is with a simpler suspension. So this pack manufacturer builds packs in fitted sizes, so there's no need for adjustability in the suspension, so you eliminate all that extra weight. So this simply has a foam pad for the back and 2 aluminum stays. There's no lift straps, there's no hip stabilizers, there's no adjustable stuff. All of that is excess weight that this manufacturer has gotten rid of. So let's see what's actually in Karl's pack. This particular pack is a dry bag style closure with no top lid or brain. So rolls up, opens, and you'll notice I don't have any extra top pocket. Those in packs are often anywhere from 8 to 12 ounces just for that top lid. So by eliminating that, I've eliminated a lot of weight. And much of the things that I used to carry in that top lid, I now carry in those hip belt pockets, or they're just flat out things I don't need accessibility while I'm hiking. I would always have my puffy jacket in the top of the pack and it doesn't need to be stuffed into a stuff sack. I just always stuff it in loose in the top of my pack, so it's readily accessible during any kind of a rest break. You'll notice I have the climbing rope here. I don't have it particularly well coiled right now. It should be well coiled. I just stuffed it in here loose, but in this case, that's the bulk of what a climbing rope would look like. I have my climbing helmet inside the pack, not dangling out off the back side of it somewhere. And it's my expectation, since I'm loaning you a climbing helmet, that you don't abuse my helmet by having it somewhere off the back side. So climbing helmet. In the cavity of the helmet, I can store all the climbing hardware and stuff like that. So you need volume for this much stuff. I mentioned that I have the cooking system in my pack as well. And this happens to be a butane integrated stove system. So integrated windscreen and heat exchanger, directly transferring heat from the burner to the pot. It has a cozy that I can grip and pour, so I don't need extra pot grippers. It comes with a little plastic bowl that fits over the bottom here, but I leave that home because I use my own personal eating bowl, which is simply one of those Ziploc bowls from the grocery store, weighs 1.3 ounces, and it fits over the bottom of my stove sebly quite nicely. The stove contains an 8-ounce canister, and I would plan 1 8-ounce canister like this per day. And then here is the stove, which is a sophisticated stove built by MSR, coupled with the heat exchanger windscreen, very, very efficient at melting snow for water. That's a big enough pot for 2 people. I have my first aid kit, about 12 ounces or so. I have my toiletries. Here's the essential miscellaneous oddball ends little things. This would be oftentimes in that big top lid, but you don't need a big old, I don't need a big old lid anymore. And here is the lid for that Ziploc pot. And I would eat out of this, drink out of this, and it's ultra lightweight. I'm particularly fond of, this is the extent of the knife I would use, which is a little Swiss Army Classic, and that's all the knife a person would ever need in mountaineering situations. Make sure you have fire for lighting your stove, whether it's butane lighter, matches, whatever you choose. Pretty embarrassing to be borrowing stuff like that from other people. Lots of people are really fond of their long-handled titanium, exotic, expensive, ultralight spoons. I find that this MSR folding spoon is just as effective getting down into my freeze-dried meals, a lot less expensive than a titanium spoon, and it folds and actually fits inside of that Ziploc bowl if I choose to carry it that way. Here is my harness. Here are my crampons because they fold really small. Here is my clothing that I have to carry up the mountain initially that I'm not wearing on the approach hike. I'll go over that in just a second. Here's the approximate, this is food, basically for 3 days mountaineering. You want to have food that weighs between about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds, 2.25 max per day. About 12 ounces of that's going to be lunch. Lunch start eating it after breakfast. Lunch ends right before dinner. You're going to need to fuel yourself all day long. So this is about how much space my 3 days worth of food would take up. You're going to need to blue bag your poop and carry it off the mountain. So what I do is I pre-prepare a daily packet for each day that includes the amount of toilet paper I'm going to use, some handy wipes, and different things like that. And the plastic bags, the blue bags I'm going to use to containerize the poop after I pick it up, the same style, the way when you're walking your dog and you pick up after your dog. That gets knotted, tied off, and then I put the plastic, double-bagged plastic inside of this nylon dry bag. And over time, of course, it'll start to fill. And in my particular case, I attach it back here to the back of my pack, or I put it down inside of this rear pocket. So that's how I deal with human waste. Here are the tent poles to my tent, and here is my tent. And one of the significant things that I always do is repackage the tent. When the tent is shipped from the manufacturer to the retail store, it's always shipped as one big, long, skinny bag. And that's an awkward way to carry the tent. They're always too long. When you break the poles out from that, you can carry the poles vertically. They travel quite nicely in people's packs or on the outside with compression straps. And then I get a stuff sack that's a larger diameter but shorter than the sack that the tent came with, and I'm able to stuff my tent away much more effectively. This happens to be a single wall tent, pretty exotic, but if I was using a double wall tent, I would do the same strategy, and with a double wall tent, I can hand the rain fly off to one of the occupants of the tent and the main body to another. We can separate out all these different components. So I've never carried tents in the bags that come from the manufacturer. I just think they're kind of bogus. I'm going to carry, here's tent stakes. I'm going to have specific tent stakes that I've properly prepared. So these are and the right amount of them. These are going to be buried dead man style, and then I have a clip system, and my guy line would go down, and I would have a little loop at the end of the guy line, and I would bury this, let it freeze in place. This is above the surface, and then I clip in the little loop, and then my guy line and tighteners are going to be up on the tent itself, and I'll later, after this is frozen in place, then I cinch the tent down for its final tautness. Here is an inflatable air mattress that's got insulation inside of it, so that and it's much lighter, much more compact than, say, your typical Thermarest pad. And this is full length and winter rated in terms of insulation, and I supplement it with this closed cell foam pad that I can use as a sit pad in camp. If this were to get a hole in it and I can't repair it in the field necessarily as efficient as I might want, I have at least a backup in the form of a closed cell foam pad. Those of you that have taken Wilderness Remote First Aid also realize that this closed cell foam pad is useful as a splint, as a backcountry gurney, I call it. We can put people on it and drag them from a dangerous situation. I like to have bottle capacity for the pot capacity. so that as soon as I'm done melting, in this particular case, it's a 1.5 liter pot. I want to have a 1.5 liter ability to pour the water off and keep right on melting more snow. So this is a large-mouthed, flexible, soft-sided container, the same volume as my pot. If I was in a 3-person group with a 3-liter pot, I have a 3-liter version of this to pour water off and keep on the process. This is a second bag of clothing that has my accessories, and I'm going to go over these two in just 1 second. And at the bottom is my sleeping bag, which is a lightweight down bag. I choose to use a down bag even in a wet marine glacier cascade environment because, first of all, my down bag stuff's very small, very, very light, very efficient, but it goes into a dry bag stuff sack, into a dry bag pack, and I don't take it out until camp, inside of a shelter. So I'm highly unlikely to get this down bag wet. Whereas my choice of puffy jacket is going to always be, most cases in the Cascades at least, some form of synthetic. So this is an ultralight synthetic puffy jacket, weighs about 9 or 10 ounces total weight. So that's pretty much most of the stuff that's in Karl's pack. Now let me just quickly review the clothing. So I would be wearing trail running shoes or approach shoes for the hike if I wasn't wearing the mountaineering boots. On Mount Rainier, I would wear the plastic boots from the parking lot and just endure the first 2 miles of asphalt trail with tourists. Because after that, you're on snow and then the plastic boots perform great. And then the way I climb Mount Rainier, there's a second camp. So if I use some sort of approach shoes till I got to the snow, I'm going to have to carry those approach shoes the rest of the whole trip. So I avoid using running shoes or trail shoes or approach shoes during a Rainier climb. On any of the other Cascade volcanoes, they involve longer approach hikes through Cascade forests. I'm going to wear approach shoes or running shoes and just carry my mountaineering boots. So I have some sort of footwear on, some sort of soft shell pant, and some sort of sun hoodie, and some sort of sun hat. And that's how I would leave the parking lot, and my glacier glasses. Trekking poles in my hands. That's me dressed from the parking lot. Now, I need to have clothing and apparel to adapt to the rest of the mountain experience. So I carry the following. As my active insulation layer, I carry a soft shell jacket that's insulated, lightly insulated. So this is my active insulation mid-layer, goes over the top of my sun hoodie. It's my go-to thing if I need any kind of insulation that's while I'm still active and climbing. And I have found that this particular, it's micro fleece line for insulation. It has a breathable but highly windproof outer shell. And this is what I would wear for most of the activities I'm doing where I need insulation but still active insulation. If it were to get wet and rainy, I'm going to wear my waterproof breathable shell. And in this case, it's a Gore-Tex shell, but with just a single chest pocket. No hand warmer pockets, no pit zips, none of that. It's just a real simple, lightweight Gore-Tex shell. I'm going to have a corresponding lightweight Gore-Tex full side zip pant that I can take on and off, whether I have crampons on, boots, or whatever. That's an important feature of this. Higher on the mountain, this would be worn for warmth, additional trapping of dead airspace, or it's worn during stormy conditions. I have a long underwear bottom, and in my particular case, this is fairly exotic, is that I found this is a merino wool long underwear bottom, but it also has full side zippers. So the beauty of that, again, is the ease of taking it on and off. I could actually be hiking in these soft shell pants, and if suddenly I think I need more warmth under the soft shell pant, I can drop the soft shell pants to my ankles, zip the merino wool long underwear layer around my legs and pull my soft shell pants back up, and now I've got, you know, insulation under my soft shell pants. Normally these would not come on until camp, to wear in camp and at night as pajamas, and then they definitely would be put on before a summit attempt, because by then it's cold enough. So my lower bottom would consist of merino wool bottom, soft shell pant, waterproof breathable shell. If it's colder than that, I have puffy pants, because I take the puffy pants as part of my sleeping system. That constitutes all of the apparel I would have for my torso and my lower body. Now, accessorizing that is the following. I have a systems glove with removable insulation. I have soft shell work gloves that have leather palms. I would have actually a second, you already saw the liner gloves that I had that I pulled out of my hip belt pocket. And I would have a buff, that red tube that I pulled out of my hip belt pocket. I have a second buff because I really like them, these polyester fabric tubes that are incredibly versatile. I have a thin merino wool with a light polyester headband beanie. And I find that I don't need any more insulation than this beanie, because every layer I'm wearing, my base layer has a hood, my active insulation has a hood, my waterproof breathable jacket has a hood, my puffy has a hood. So that may seem redundant, but having the hood allows me to really fine tune my insulation on my head quickly and fast. And I can mix and match what type of hood I'm going to be wearing. I have gaiters, which would not be put on until much higher on the mountain, and my spare socks. So I hope this quick look at what's in Karl's pack will kind of give you an idea of what you might need, or similar sort of things that'll help you in your packing.